Hello everyone. The topic for today is there is and there are. The form, the uses, and some examples. So let's start. Both there is and there are used to say that something exists or not. They actually mean the same, but the main difference is that there is used for singular form and there are is for plurals. Into the structures or forms for there is and there are, we have three for the affirmative form. The first one is there is plus a singular noun. For example, there is a book on the desk. The second one is for there are. We add a plural noun and the example is there are books on the desk. And finally, we have there is plus an uncountable noun. For example, there is some milk in the fridge. Then we have the negative form. The first one is there isn't plus a singular noun. For example, there isn't a pen on the table. Then we have there aren't plus a plural noun. For example, there aren't any pens here. And finally, we have there isn't plus an uncountable noun. For example, there isn't any juice on the fridge. Finally, we have the question form. In this one, we're going to change the position of the subject. We're not going to say there is a cat on the chair, but is there a cat on the chair? And the other example, we're not going to say there are cats on the sofa, but are there cats on the sofa? Another things we need to have into the question forms is that to form a question we place is or are in front of there, as we saw in the last examples. Also, we use any with plural questions or those which use uncountable nouns. Finally, we also use there is or there are in short answers. So here we have some examples of the question forms and how to answer in a short way. The first one is there a dog in the supermarket? No, there isn't. Then, are there any dogs in the park? Yes, there are. Then we have, is there a security guard in the shop? Yes, there is. Then we have, are there any polar bears in the Antarctica? No, there aren't. Finally, we have, is there any ice cream in the freezer? Yes, there is. Another thing we need to know about is the contractions. For there is, the contraction is there's. For there's not are two contractions. The first one is there's not and also there isn't. And finally, the contraction for there are not is there aren't. With there aren't, when we want to indicate that a zero quantity of something exists, we use there aren't any. For example, there aren't any people at the party. And also, there aren't any trees in my street. Another use with the question forms is with how many. Because if we want to find out the number of objects that exist, we use how many in the following form. We use first how many plus a plural noun plus are there, and finally the complement. For example, how many dogs are there in the park? And also, how many students are there in your class? Well, let me tell you that both are right. but it depends on what do you want to emphasize to choose one correct. For example, use there is if you want to emphasize the group, and use there are if you want to emphasize the individual members. Here we have two examples. Both are correct, but it depended on what the author or the writer wanted to emphasize. The first one is, there is a wide variety of flavors to choose from. And the other one is, there are a variety of unique destinations we can visit. Right now, let's do some exercises in order to understand what we have learned. In this one, we have to complete at the beginning of the three sentences with there is and there are. So we're going to see the image here, and we are going to find out if there is or there are. The first one is a t-shirt on the bed. What do you think? Is there is or there are? Yes, there is a t-shirt on the bed. The second one is two books on the floor. Let's look at the image. What do you think? We're going to put there is or there are. Yes, there are two books on the floor. Finally, we have a scarf on the floor. What do you think? There is or there are? Yes, there is a scarf on the floor. So basically that was all for my part. I hope that you learned something today. Thank you very much.